I'm Stephanie, 29 female. I live in a quiet suburban town in a small two-bedroom house that I worked incredibly hard to afford on my own. As a data analyst for a major financial firm, my life is built on numbers, patterns, and predictability. Everything has its place, and every action has a logical consequence. My world was a carefully constructed fortress of stability, built with savings accounts, a perfect credit score, and a deep-seated need for control. This fortress was designed to keep out the chaos that always seemed to follow my family, specifically my older brother, Jake. But as I would soon learn, some forms of chaos don't bother knocking. They steal the key, walk right in, and set the whole house on fire. This is the story of how my brother's belief that he was smarter than everyone else, including the federal government, led him to steal my identity for a truck and ended with him trading that truck for a prison cell. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Growing up, my brother Jake was the sun our family revolved around. I was the moon, quietly reflecting his light and often left in his shadow. He was 2 years older, effortlessly charming, and had a smile that could talk our mother, Karen, into just about anything. While I was inside studying, Jake was outside, the neighborhood hero of every street football game. While I was saving my allowance for a sensible used car, Jake was convincing our parents that he needed the brand new convertible for his social standing in high school. And he got it. He always got what he wanted. Our mother would often say, "Jake just has a magnetism, Stephanie. People are drawn to him." What she called magnetism, I recognized early on as a finely tuned ability to manipulate people to get his way. He wasn't a bad person in the classic sense. He wasn't cruel or violent. He was just profoundly selfish, wrapped in a blanket of charisma that made his selfishness look like ambition. Our paths diverged sharply after high school. I went to a state university, got a degree in statistics, and landed a junior analyst position right out of college. I spent my 20s living with roommates, driving a 10-year-old car, and diligently packing my lunch every day. Every dollar was accounted for. I watched my credit score climb point by point, a tangible measure of my discipline and responsibility. It was my proudest achievement, a 3-digit number that proved I was nothing like my brother. By the time I was 28, I had an 820 credit score, a solid down payment, and the keys to my own home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, earned through years of sacrifice and careful planning. Jake, on the other hand, coasted. He bounced between community colleges, tried a few get-rich-quick schemes, and eventually landed a job as a car salesman. It was the perfect fit for him. He could use his charm to sell people things they didn't need, making a decent commission when his luck was in. The problem was, his luck was rarely consistent, and he lived as if he were the CEO of the dealership. He always had the latest phone, wore designer clothes, and ate at expensive restaurants, posting it all over social media. I knew for a fact that he was living far beyond his means, constantly borrowing money from our mother to cover his rent or car payments. She always obliged, sighing as she told me, "He's just trying to build a certain image for his career, honey. You have to spend money to make money." Our relationship as adults was polite but distant. We'd see each other at holiday dinners and family birthdays, where the dynamic was always the same. He would regale the family with stories of his latest big sale or a fancy client dinner, while I would talk about my stable job and my garden. My achievements were quiet and solid, like a brick house. His were loud and flashy, like fireworks, dazzling for a moment, then gone, leaving nothing but smoke. The subtle and sometimes not so subtle comparisons were constant. "Oh, Stephanie, you're so sensible," my mother would say, which was code for boring. Then she'd turn to Jake and say, "Jake, you really live life to the fullest," which was code for reckless and irresponsible. He would just smirk at me over his plate, a look that said, "See, I'm still the favorite." The tension came to a head about 6 months before everything imploded. Jake called me late one night, something he never did. His voice had a frantic edge. He needed to borrow $3,000. "It's just for a month, Steph, I swear," he pleaded. I have a huge commission check coming, but my rent is due and I'm a little short. I hesitated. I had the money in my emergency fund, but I had a strict rule about loaning money to family, especially to Jake. I don't know, Jake. I started. Come on, Steph, don't be lick. It's me, your brother, he pressed, his voice dripping with manufactured urgency. You're sitting on all this money, and I'm out here struggling to make a name for myself, just this once. Against my better judgment, I relented. I transferred him the money with a clear agreement that he'd pay it back on the first of the following month. Of course, the first came and went. I texted him. He replied, "Next week, promise, check is delayed." A week later, it was another excuse. This went on for 2 months. Finally, I had to call our mother and explain the situation. Her response was disappointingly predictable. "Oh, Stephanie, you know how he is. Don't pressure him. You don't need the money that badly, do you? He's under a lot of stress." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just his sister. I was his safety net, and my mother was the one holding it open for him. I eventually got the money back, but it came in sporadic $200 and $300 chunks over the next 4 months, and only after I threatened to take him to small claims court. The whole ordeal left a sour taste in my mouth. I vowed to never give him a single cent again. I changed my passwords, made sure my financial documents were secure, and drew a firm line in the sand. I thought that would be enough to protect myself. I had no idea that he wouldn't bother asking next time. He would just take. A few weeks after I finally received the last payment from Jake, the family drama seemed to quiet down. I went back to my orderly life, analyzing spreadsheets by day and tending to my vegetable garden in the evenings. I cherished the peace. My best friend, Olivia, a high school history teacher with a sharp wit and zero tolerance for nonsense, was my sounding board. We'd have dinner once a week, and she was the only one I could vent to about my family. "He's a 31-year-old child," she said one night over pizza, "and your mom is the reason he'll never grow up. You were right to cut him off financially. Just be prepared for him to test that boundary again." I nodded, confident in my resolve. "He can test it all he wants," I said firmly. "The Bank of Stephanie is permanently closed." The first sign that something was amiss came not from a phone call or a text, but from Instagram. I was scrolling through my feed on a lazy Saturday morning when a picture from Jake popped up. It was him, leaning against the grill of a brand-new, top-of-the-line pickup truck. It was one of those monster trucks, metallic black, with oversized tires and all the luxury add-ons. It looked like it belonged on a movie set, not in the driveway of a perpetually broke car salesman. He was beaming in the photo, sunglasses on, with one arm draped possessively over the hood. The caption was pure Jake. "Work hard, play harder, time for an upgrade. Blessed new ride truck life." My first reaction was a mix of annoyance and disbelief. An upgrade? His last car, a sporty but modest sedan, was barely 3 years old. He was constantly complaining about the payments on that one. How in the world could he afford this? The truck in the photo easily cost upwards of $45,000, maybe more. I did a quick search online for the model and trim. The starting MSRP was $48,000. My mind immediately went to our mother. Had she co-signed for him? Or worse, had she drained her retirement account to buy him this monstrosity? I felt a surge of protective anger on her behalf. She wasn't wealthy, and Jake was already a significant drain on her finances. I decided to call her. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I saw Jake's new truck on Instagram. It's big." She let out a little laugh. "Oh, isn't it something? He's so excited. He told me he got a fantastic deal through his dealership. A manager's special or something." A manager's special? That sounded like a classic Jake exaggeration. Dealership employees get discounts, but not 50% off a new vehicle discounts. Did he say how he paid for it? I pressed gently. "Did you help him with it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Stephanie, that's none of your business," she said, her tone suddenly defensive. "Jake is a grown man. He handles his own finances." This was her standard deflection whenever I questioned Jake's choices. It was a brick wall I'd run into 1,000 times. But this felt different. She sounded evasive, even for her. If she had helped him, she usually would have defended it, telling me he deserved it or that it was a good investment in his career. Her, "It's none of your business" response was a red flag. It meant she either didn't know and was embarrassed to admit it, or she did know and was actively hiding the truth from me. I let it go, knowing I wouldn't get a straight answer. "Okay, Mom, just curious, talk to you later." I hung up the phone with a knot in my stomach. Something wasn't right, the math just didn't add up. A week later, our extended family had a barbecue at my aunt's house. It was the first time I'd seen Jake in person since the truck appeared. He, of course, drove it to the party, parking it ostentatiously on the street right in front of the house so everyone could admire it. He strutted around the backyard, beer in hand, accepting compliments from our uncles and cousins. "Yeah, she's a beauty," he'd say, puffing out his chest. "Fully loaded. V8 engine. It's a beast." He caught my eye from across the lawn and gave me that familiar, smug smirk. He sauntered over to where I was standing with Olivia, who had come as my guest. "What do you think of the new wheels, little sis?" he asked, his voice full of bravado. "Finally decided to get a vehicle that matches my ambition." I gave him a flat look. "It's a very expensive-looking truck, Jake. How did you swing it?" He laughed, a loud, dismissive sound. "That's what you get when you're good at what you do. I'm one of the top salesmen in the region. They take care of their own." Olivia, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "Wow, the dealership just gave it to you?" Jake's smile tightened. "Not gave, no, but I got a financing deal you wouldn't believe, basically a steal." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Steph. Not everyone is meant to be a high flyer. Some people are happy with their sensible sedans and their little houses." He winked, then walked away to join a conversation about sports, leaving me fuming. The condescension was infuriating. It wasn't the truck itself that bothered me, it was the lie. I knew he was lying. I just couldn't figure out what the lie was hiding. The betrayal wasn't just in his arrogance, but in the feeling that a secret was being kept, a secret that somehow involved the whole family's willful ignorance. I watched him laugh with our cousins, the charismatic golden boy, and felt a cold dread creep over me. The truck wasn't a symbol of his success. It was a warning. Life returned to its normal rhythm for about a month after the barbecue. I tried to push Jake and his ridiculous truck out of my mind. It was his life, his debt, his problem. I had my own responsibilities to worry about. A major project at work was demanding all my attention, and my garden needed to be prepared for the changing season. I focused on my own neat and tidy corner of the world, reinforcing the walls I had built to keep the family chaos at bay. But the universe has a way of reminding you that some walls are made of paper. The discovery came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, deep in a complex data set when the doorbell rang. It was the mail carrier, holding a clipboard and a green certified letter. "Need a signature for this one, ma'am," he said politely. I rarely received certified mail. It was usually reserved for important official business, tax documents, legal notices, things that made your stomach clench. I signed the electronic pad and took the envelope. The return address was for a major national bank, but it wasn't my bank. Underneath the bank's name, it said Automotive Finance Division. My heart started to beat a little faster. Why was a bank's car loan department sending me certified mail? I closed the door, my hands slightly trembling as I tore open the thick envelope. Inside was a single, densely printed page. I skimmed the first few lines, and the words seemed to blur together. I forced myself to slow down, to read each word carefully. The letter was a notice of delinquent payment and intent to report to credit bureaus. My eyes scanned down the page, searching for the details. Loan account number, a long string of digits I didn't recognize. Borrower name, Stephanie, my last name. Collateral, a brand new black make and model of truck. Loan amount, $45,872.14. Amount due, $789.55. Past due, 32 days. I had to read it 3 times before the reality of it sank in. It felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. My name. My name was on a $45,000 loan for my brother's truck. The room started to feel small, the air thick and hard to breathe. I stumbled back and sat down heavily on my sofa, the letter shaking in my hand. It couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. a clerical error, a mix-up of some kind. But my full name, my address, it was all there, printed in stark black and white. 32 days past due. That meant it was already damaging my credit. The perfect score I had spent a decade building, the symbol of my independence and responsibility, was being destroyed by a debt I had never agreed to. My first instinct was denial, quickly followed by a tidal wave of pure, undiluted rage. Jake. It had to be Jake. The smug smirk at the barbecue, the evasive answers, our mother's strange defensiveness, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. He hadn't gotten a manager's special. He had used me. He had stolen my identity. But how? I was so careful. I shredded my documents. I used complex passwords. Then a memory surfaced, a small, seemingly insignificant detail from about 2 months prior. He had Ohm over to my house to help me move a heavy piece of furniture I'd bought. He had been alone in my home office for about 10 minutes while I was in the garage. My desk with my file cabinet was in that office. Had he gone through my files, found my social security number, my date of birth, all the pieces of information needed to impersonate someone? The thought made me feel sick, violated. My mind raced. What do I do? Who do I call? The bank? The police? I felt completely overwhelmed, lost in a sea of betrayal and panic. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen, and called the one person I knew would bring me back to solid ground, Olivia. She answered on her lunch break, her voice cheerful. Hey, what's up? All I could manage to get out was a choked sob. Steph, what's wrong? Are you okay? She asked, her tone instantly shifting to concern. I took a deep, shuddering breath and explained everything, reading the words from the letter out loud. She was silent for a moment after I finished, and I could hear the faint sound of her classroom's bell in the background. Stay right where you are, she said, her voice firm and calm. Don't call the bank, don't call your mother, and definitely do not call Jake. I'm leaving school now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Waiting for Olivia felt like an eternity. I paced my living room, the letter clutched in my fist, my mind cycling through a hurricane of emotions. Fury at Jake, deep hurt at the violation of trust, and a growing fear of the financial nightmare that was about to unfold. How could he do this? How could my own brother, who I had helped just months ago, turn around and betray me so profoundly? This wasn't just about money. It was a fundamental rejection of everything I stood for and a complete disregard for my life and my future. He had taken my name, my hard-earned reputation for reliability, and attached it to his reckless, selfish desires. When Olivia arrived and saw the look on my face, she didn't say a word. She just pulled me into a hug as I finally broke down, the full weight of the discovery crashing down on me. My perfect, orderly world had been shattered, and the person holding the hammer was my own flesh and blood. Olivia was a rock. While I was a mess of tears and incoherent rage, she was the calm center of the storm. She took the letter from my hand, smoothed it out on the coffee table, and went into what I called her teacher mode, organized, methodical, and focused on a plan. Okay, she said, her voice steady. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're not going to panic. Second, we're going to treat this like a crime scene, because that's exactly what it is. You are the victim of a federal crime, identity theft and bank fraud. We need to gather evidence before we make a single move. Her words cut through my emotional fog. Federal crime, the phrase was sobering. This wasn't a simple family squabble over money anymore. This was serious, with life-altering consequences for both me and Jake. Olivia pulled out her laptop. First step, credit reports. We need to see the full extent of the damage, not just this loan. If he did this, who knows what else he might have done. We spent the next hour on the official credit bureau websites, pulling my reports from all 3 major agencies. As the pages loaded, my anxiety grew. And there it was, on all 3 reports, a hard inquiry from the bank's auto finance division, followed by a new installment loan for $45,872. The account was already marked as 30 days delinquent. My pristine credit score had plummeted by nearly 100 points. Seeing it in black and white felt like a punch to the gut. Thankfully, it seemed to be the only fraudulent account. He had a specific goal, the truck, and he had used my identity solely for that purpose. Okay, so the damage is contained to this one loan, Olivia said, pointing at the screen. That's good. Now we need proof that you didn't authorize this. The loan application itself is the key. I called the bank's fraud department. My voice was shaky, but I followed the script Olivia and I had rehearsed. I explained that I had received a delinquency notice for a loan I had never applied for and that I believed I was a victim of identity theft. The woman on the other end of the line was professional and sympathetic. She immediately froze the account and began a fraud investigation. She confirmed that the loan had been applied for online. We will need you to file a police report and an identity theft affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission, she instructed. Once you have those, send them to us, and we can move forward with removing the fraudulent loan from your name. We will also mail you a complete copy of the loan application packet for your records. Filing the police report was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Sitting in the sterile, impersonal environment of the local police station, I had to say the words out loud to an off. "Sir, my brother Jake stole my identity." The officer was stoic, typing my statement into his computer. He explained that because the fraud was committed online with a national bank, it was likely outside their jurisdiction and would be a federal matter, but a local report was the necessary first step. Leaving the station with a case number in hand, I felt a strange mix of resolve and profound sadness. I had officially crossed a line. There was no going back. This was no longer a family problem to be swept under the rug. I had brought the law into our lives. The copy of the loan application arrived in the mail a week later. Olivia and I sat at my kitchen table and spread the documents out like detectives examining evidence. It was a goldmine of Jake's stupidity and arrogance. He had filled it out using my name, my social security number, and my date of birth. But he had made so many sloppy mistakes. For his address, he had listed his own. For his phone number, he used his own cell. And for his employer, he had completely fabricated information. He'd claimed that Stephanie worked as a senior financial manager at a non-existent company, and he had invented an absurdly high salary for me, more than double what I actually made. He had clearly assumed no one would check the details too closely, or that my high credit score would be enough to push the application through without scrutiny. The most damning piece of evidence was the electronic signature page. The bank system had recorded the IP address from which the application was submitted. An IP address is a unique identifier for an internet connection, like a digital fingerprint. Olivia, who was more tech-savvy than I was, immediately recognized its importance. "We can trace this," she said, her eyes lighting up. "If this IP address traces back to his home or the dealership, you have him cornered." A quick search of publicly available IP tracking tools confirmed our suspicions. The address was registered to the primary internet service provider for the town where Jake lived. While not a smoking gun on its own, it was another strong piece of circumstantial evidence pointing directly at him. We spent the next few days meticulously organizing our findings into a neat, comprehensive file: the certified letter, the credit reports, the police report, the FTC affidavit, and the entire loan packet with his fake salary and real contact information highlighted. Every document told a piece of the story, weaving a narrative of calculated deceit. The investigation was clarifying. It transformed my chaotic feelings of hurt and anger into cold, hard facts. The evidence was undeniable. Jake hadn't just made a mistake, he had orchestrated a deliberate criminal act. He had gambled with my entire financial future, assuming I would either not find out or be too scared and ashamed to do anything about it. He assumed I would protect him, just like our mother always did. He had underestimated me, and that was going to be his biggest mistake of all. With a folder full of irrefutable evidence, the question was no longer if I would act, but how. My conversation with the bank's fraud department had been reassuring. They were confident that, with the police report and FTC affidavit, they could remove the loan from my credit history. But that felt incomplete. That would absolve me of the financial burden, but it would do nothing to hold Jake accountable. He would get to keep the truck, face zero consequences, and would have learned nothing except that he could get away with it. The thought was unbearable. He had violated my trust, my security, and my identity. He didn't deserve to just walk away scot-free. This wasn't just about clearing my name, this was about justice. Olivia and I talked it over at length. You have two paths, she said, laying it out plainly. Path one is the family path. You confront him, show him the evidence, and demand he sells the truck and pays off the loan immediately. You tell your mother what he did. There will be screaming, crying, and a massive family meltdown, but maybe you can handle it internally. I shook my head before she even finished. No, that's what he expects. He'll apologize, promise to fix it, and Mom will beg me to forgive him. In 6 months, he'll be making late payments, and I'll be back in the same position, but with no legal recourse because I tried to handle it in the family. He's had his chance to do the right thing. He chose fraud instead. Okay, Olivia said, nodding slowly. Then there's path two, the legal path. You take your evidence file not just to the local police, but to the federal authorities they mentioned. You cooperate with their investigation and let the justice system do its work. But you have to understand what that means, Steph. It means you might have to testify against your brother. It means he could go to prison. It will tear your family apart, possibly forever. There is no unsigning that complaint NC, you file it. I stared out my window at the garden I had so carefully cultivated. Each plant was there because I had chosen it, nurtured it, and protected it. My life was the same. I had built it deliberately, and Jake had come in like a blight. If I didn't cut out the disease completely, it would eventually kill the whole plant. The decision, as terrifying as it was, became clear. He had committed a federal crime. He deserved a federal response. Path two, I said, my voice quiet but firm. He made his choice when he forged my name. Now I'm making mine. The next day, I contacted the regional office of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, as they are one of the primary agencies that investigate identity theft and bank fraud, especially when the mail is involved, like the certified letter I received. I was connected with an inspector, a man named Agent Miller, who listened patiently as I recounted the entire story and detailed the evidence I had collected. His tone was serious and professional. He was impressed with the documentation I had already gathered. "Ms. My last name," he said, "you've done a significant amount of the groundwork for us. The loan application with his personal contact information and the IP address is particularly compelling." He asked me to send him a secure digital copy of my entire file. He explained that if they decided to take the case, the next step would be to secure more direct evidence, ideally a confession from my brother himself. That's when he proposed the idea of a recorded phone call. "He doesn't know that you know the specifics," Agent Miller explained. "If you were to call him and confront him, his reaction could be very telling. We would, of course, need your consent to record the call, and we would provide the equipment and coach you on what to say. The goal is not to trap him with clever questions, but simply to give him the opportunity to admit what he did. His own words are the most powerful evidence we could have." The idea of confronting Jake was daunting, but doing it this way, as part of a formal investigation, felt powerful. It wasn't just me, his little sister, nagging him about money. It was a calculated move in a much larger game. I agreed. A few days later, I met with Agent Miller and another inspector in a generic office building downtown. They fitted my cell phone with a recording device and walked me through the scenario. They told me to act confused and upset, but not accusatory at first. Start with the letter from the bank, ask him if he knows anything about it, and let him talk. Let him dig his own hole. People like him are often arrogant, Agent Miller advised. They believe they're smarter than everyone else. That arrogance is their weakness. Let him be arrogant. I went home with my wired phone, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the point of no return. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had opened the letter that started this nightmare, and took a deep breath. I had a short script of opening lines I had rehearsed with the agents. I thought about all the years of being dismissed, of being the sensible and boring one while he was the charismatic star. I thought about his smug smirk and his condescending tone. He had counted on me being a quiet, compliant victim. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I picked up the phone, my hand steady, and dialed his number. The trap was set. All he had to do was walk into it. The phone rang 3 times before Jake picked up. "Hey, Steph, what's up?" he answered, his voice casual and upbeat. He sounded like he didn't have a care in the world. For a split second, my resolve wavered. This was my brother. Could I really do this? Then I pictured the delinquency notice and the 100-point drop in my credit score. The resolve returned like a steel rod up my spine. "Jake, I need to ask you about something," I began, trying to inject a note of worried confusion into my voice, just as Agent Miller had coached. "I got a really weird letter in the mail today. It's from a bank, their auto finance department, saying I'm late on a payment for a truck." I let the sentence hang in the air. There was a brief pause on his end. "A truck? That's weird," he said, but his voice was a little too quick, a little too defensive. "Must be some kind of scam or a mistake. You should probably just throw it out." "I don't think it's a mistake, Jake," I pressed, keeping my tone level. "It has my full name, my address. It even has my social security number on the account details. And the truck it's for, it's the exact make and model as yours. It's a loan for over $45,000. Another pause, this one longer. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head as he tried to figure out his next move. "Wow, that's crazy," he said, his voice laced with fake sympathy. "Someone must have stolen your identity. You should call the police or something. That's really messed up." He was playing dumb, just as we had anticipated. It was time to push a little harder. "The thing is, Jake," I said, my voice trembling slightly for effect, "the application for the loan, it has your cell phone number listed as the primary contact, and your address. Why would an identity thief use your information on my application?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I had him. I knew I had him. He was cornered, and his only way out was to lie or confess. He chose a third option: attack. "Oh my God, Stephanie, are you serious?" He finally spat, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think I did this? You think I would steal your identity? After everything I do for this family, this is the thanks I get? Unbelievable." The performance was almost impressive. The righteous indignation, the wounded pride. It was the same tactic he'd used his whole life to deflect blame. But I had the facts on my side. "I'm just looking at the paperwork, Jake. My name, your truck, your phone number. You have to admit, it looks really bad." And then the arrogance Agent Miller had predicted came roaring to the surface. He let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound I knew well, the laugh he used when he thought he had outsmarted someone. "Okay, fine," he said, his voice shifting from defensive to smug. "You want to know what happened? I used your information to get the loan. So what? It's not a big deal." I was stunned. I expected more denials, more lies. I never thought he would admit it so freely. "Not a big deal." I repeated, my genuine shock overriding my rehearsed script. "Jake, it's bank fraud. It's destroying my credit." He laughed again, louder this time. "Oh, relax, I was going to make the payments. The first one was just a little late because a commission check got delayed. You wouldn't have even noticed if the bank hadn't sent that stupid letter. I did you a favor, really. Your credit is so good, it was a piece of cake to get approved. They didn't even call to verify anything." He said it with such casual entitlement, as if he had simply borrowed a cup of sugar. As if my financial identity was a community resource for him to use at will. This was the moment, the key part of the conversation. "Why would you do that, Jake? Why wouldn't you just ask me, or ask Mom to co-sign?" His response was the final nail in his coffin. It was the line that would echo in my head for months, the one that perfectly encapsulated his entire personality. "Because you would have said no, obviously," he scoffed. "And Mom's credit is shot. You're so uptight about everything with your little budget and your perfect score. I knew you wouldn't help me. So I helped myself." He paused and then delivered the knockout blow, his voice dripping with scornful amusement. "God, you're such an idiot, Stephanie. It was so easy. You should really be more careful with your things. You're such an idiot." He wasn't just admitting the crime, he was mocking me for being the victim. He was proud of what he'd done. He felt superior. In that moment, any lingering trace of familial sentiment, any shred of doubt about what I was doing, evaporated. He felt no remorse. He felt no guilt. He only felt contempt for me and my uptight life. "I have to go, Jake," I said, my voice cold and flat. "We'll talk about this later." "Yeah, whatever," he said dismissively. "Don't make a big deal out of this. I'll transfer you the money for the late payment tomorrow." He hung up. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, the recording device on my phone a silent witness. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness anymore. It was from a cold, resolute anger. He had confessed to everything. He had mocked me. He had called me an idiot. And it was all on tape. I picked up the phone again and made my second call. "Agent Miller," I said, my voice steady. "I have what you need." Handing over the recording to Agent Miller felt like closing a chapter of my life. The investigation moved swiftly after that. With Jake's direct confession on tape, combined with the mountain of documentary evidence I had already provided, the Postal Inspection Service had everything they needed to build an ironclad case. A federal prosecutor was assigned, and a grand jury was convened. About 2 months after that fateful phone call, Jake was formally indicted on federal charges of bank fraud and aggravated identity theft. The day Jake was arrested was surreal. He wasn't taken in a dramatic raid, but quietly apprehended at his dealership by 2 plainclothes inspectors. I wasn't there, of course, but my mother called me, her voice hysterical. "They arrested him, Stephanie. They arrested your brother at his job. Did you know about this? You have to help him." I took a deep breath. There was no more hiding. "Yes, Mom, I knew. I'm the one who reported him." The silence on the other end of the line was heavier than any accusation. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and venomous. "How could you? He's brother, your own flesh and blood. You've ruined his life all over some stupid truck." That phone call was the beginning of the end for my relationship with my mother. She refused to believe the severity of what Jake had done. In her eyes, it was a simple mistake, a misunderstanding that I had selfishly blown out of proportion. She couldn't or wouldn't see him as a criminal. She saw me as the betrayer. She drained her savings to hire a lawyer for him, a lawyer who tried to argue that it was all a family matter that had been misconstrued, but the evidence was overwhelming. The signed loan application with his contact information, the IP address trace, and most damningly, the crystal-clear recording of him confessing and calling me an idiot. Faced with the certainty of a conviction at trial, Jake's lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of bank fraud. The aggravated identity theft charge was dropped in exchange for his plea. At the sentencing hearing, I chose not to attend, but Olivia went on my behalf. She told me later that Jake looked pale and small in the courtroom, his usual charisma completely gone. He was forced to read a pre-written statement of apology, but Olivia said it sounded hollow and insincere. My mother sat in the front row, weeping silently. The judge was not swayed by the family drama. He spoke sternly about the seriousness of these crimes, how they undermine the financial system and destroy victims' lives. He sentenced Jake to 24 months in a low-security federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay full restitution to the bank for the amount of the loan. The truck, of course, had been repossessed by the bank months earlier. The sentence sent shockwaves through our family. My mother was inconsolable and has barely spoken to me since. She sends me short, clipped text messages on my birthday and holidays, but our relationship is fractured, perhaps permanently. Some of my extended family sided with her, viewing me as cold and unforgiving. Others quietly told me they understood why I did it, that Jake had been heading for a fall for years. The family gatherings I used to attend are now a thing of the past. The divide is too deep. It's been a year now since Jake went to prison. The bank, with the help of the federal case, quickly cleared the fraudulent loan from my name. It took several months of diligent work, sending letters and copies of the court judgment to the credit bureaus, but my credit score has finally recovered. It's back over 800, a number that once again symbolizes my resilience and control over my own life. I've found a new kind of peace in the quiet. My life is still orderly, my house is still my sanctuary, and my garden is thriving. But something in me has changed. I'm less naive. I've learned that sometimes the greatest threats don't come from strangers, but from the people who are supposed to love you the most. And I've learned that I am strong enough to protect myself, even if it means making the hardest decisions imaginable. I don't know what will happen when Jake gets out of prison. I don't know if he will be changed or if he will still be the same arrogant, entitled person he always was. I don't know if my mother will ever forgive me. What I do know is that I did the right thing. I drew a line not just for myself, but for anyone who has ever been taken advantage of by a loved one. Justice doesn't always feel good. It can be painful, and it can come at a great personal cost. But standing up for yourself, reclaiming your name, and refusing to be a victim, that is a victory that no one can ever take away from you.